Panic mode. Politicians turn a blind eye to Canada's biggest crisis yet. Canada's trucking industry is facing a significant crisis that has raised alarms, yet political leaders remain conspicuously silent. A recent incident in Florida, where Harjinder Singh, an unlicensed truck driver, made an illegal U-turn resulting in a tragic crash that claimed lives, has sparked outrage across North America. This incident, while occurring in the U.S., has resonated deeply with Canadians, especially following the emergence of a similar video from Winnipeg, Canada, showing another turban-wearing Sikh truck driver reportedly engaging in reckless driving behaviors. These events have ignited fervent debates about the safety standards in the North American trucking industry and the implications of large-scale immigration on road safety. The Canadian trucking industry, a cornerstone of the nation's economy, plays a critical role in the movement of goods across vast distances. It is responsible for transporting more than 70% of the country's freight, making it essential for the supply chain. However, beneath this essential role lies a troubling underbelly of corruption and negligence that threatens the safety of all Canadians. Foreign trucking companies, especially those employing immigrant drivers, have been accused of circumventing vital safety regulations, providing inadequate training, and exploiting vulnerable workers. Such practices not only jeopardize the safety of Canadian roads, but also undermine the integrity of the entire trucking industry. One of the most alarming aspects of this crisis is the exploitation of immigrant workers. Many of these drivers, often hailing from South Asia, are recruited through immigration programs that promise expedited immigration in exchange for their labor. However, the reality they face upon arriving in Canada is often starkly different. These drivers frequently find themselves subjected to grueling work conditions, including long hours that far exceed legal limits, insufficient rest periods, and unsafe driving practices that compromise their safety and that of others on the road. Many are coerced into accepting wages that are a fraction of the industry average, with some employers imposing exorbitant fees for training and licensing, effectively indebting these workers before they even begin their careers. The lack of proper oversight and regulation has allowed these exploitative practices to flourish unchecked. While the Canadian Trucking Alliance has called for stricter enforcement of labor standards and the introduction of a known employer program to vet companies involved in the immigration process, these recommendations have largely been ignored by policymakers. The federal government, under Prime Minister Mark Carney, has been slow to respond, often prioritizing political considerations over the pressing issue of public safety. This inaction is particularly egregious in light of recent tragic events. The arrest of Navjeet Singh, an Indian-origin truck driver who fled Ontario after causing a fatal crash that killed a mother and her daughter, underscores the systemic failures within the trucking industry. Singh's capture at Toronto's Pearson International Airport, after 9 months on the run, highlights the challenges law enforcement faces in holding negligent drivers accountable. The Canadian Trucking Alliance has urged the government to adopt enforcement measures similar to those in the United States, which recently halted visas for foreign truck drivers due to escalating safety and compliance concerns. The government's reluctance to tackle these pressing issues appears to stem from a desire to maintain favorable relationships with the immigrant community, perceived as a valuable voting bloc. However, this political calculus comes at a significant cost to public safety. By turning a blind eye to the systemic problems within the trucking industry, politicians are enabling dangerous practices that put all Canadians at risk. The consequences of this negligence are not mere statistics, they are real and devastating. The Humboldt Broncos bus crash of 2018, which resulted in the tragic deaths of 16 people, serves as a grim reminder of the dangers posed by unqualified drivers. The driver involved in that catastrophic incident, Jaskirat Singh Sidhu, had received only 2 weeks of training and was employed by a company that blatantly disregarded safety regulations. Despite the widespread public outcry and subsequent legal proceedings, little meaningful change has occurred in terms of oversight and regulation of the industry. The situation is further exacerbated by the rise of an underground economy within the trucking sector. In British Columbia, the Employment Standards Tribunal has acknowledged that the trucking industry represents one of the largest underground economies in Canada, rife with labor law abuses and instances of human trafficking. These illicit activities are facilitated by a network of immigration consultants, driver training institutes, job placement firms, and trucking companies that exploit foreign workers. Many of these workers are subjected to conditions that amount to forced labor, with some companies charging what can be termed a head tax to secure employment. The lack of accountability for these practices is a direct result of the government's failure to enforce existing labor laws and regulations effectively. While there have been some efforts to address these issues, such as the $26 million investment announced in 2022 to combat predatory practices in the trucking industry, these measures have been insufficient and poorly implemented. Without comprehensive reform and robust enforcement, the exploitation of immigrant workers and the endangerment of public safety will persist unabated. The public's frustration with the government's inaction is palpable and growing. Canadians are demanding accountability and reform in the trucking industry. They're calling for stricter licensing requirements, better training programs, and more rigorous enforcement of safety standards. There is a strong advocacy for the removal of unqualified drivers from the roads and the closure of companies that engage in exploitative practices. However, without the necessary political will and decisive action, these demands will likely remain unmet. The trucking industry stands at a critical crossroads. It can either continue down its current path, characterized by corruption, exploitation, and negligence, or it can reform itself into a model of safety, fairness, and integrity. The choice rests firmly in the hands of Canada's political leaders. Will they continue to ignore the crisis unfolding on their roads, or will they take meaningful steps to address the systemic issues within the trucking industry? The time for action is now. Canadians deserve safe roads, fair labor practices, and a government that prioritizes public safety over political expediency. Only through comprehensive reform and an unwavering commitment to enforcement can the trucking industry regain its rightful place as a trusted and vital component of Canada's economy. The public is watching closely, and the demand for change grows louder with each passing day.